Hello wonderful humans and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Lucy and I'm a PhD student at the University of Birmingham, and today I want to talk to you about my first year doing a PhD, how I found it, what did I do, what was the social life like, did it live up to my expectations? Now I've done a couple of these before. I've done a 3-month one and a 6-month one, so you are welcome to check them out. I will leave a little card in the corner. We're getting so professional on this channel, guys. I'm remembering to do cards. So I think the first thing that will be really useful if you are kind of nervous about your first year is I'm gonna kind of break down what I've done. What can you expect your workload to be? What can you expect to achieve? Obviously this will differ from person to person, course to course, PhD project to PhD project, but it will give you a little idea, a little kind of, okay, roughly that's how much work's expected, roughly that's how much output is expected. I would say the first thing you probably all want to know is, how much do you write in your first year? It's a valid question. It's a little hard to say because you write a lot more and then you don't use everything. So I would say I have written around 10,000 words of what I currently consider good, usable content. I have written about 4,000, 5,000 of my first chapter, which is all on the history of LGBT plus romances, tracing them right back from the classical period all the way to the 21st century. I have written then about, again, 4,000 on a particular case study, a book I'm looking at, or a trilogy I should say, that is all focusing on queer masculinity. How has the male body been portrayed, in particularly in queer romance novels? And that, as I said, is about 4,000. It's not finished yet. And then I've written about another 2,000, which are case studies of individual books, which currently don't have a place within the thesis as a whole, but they are still pretty good. I think they can still be used in some way. I just haven't figured out what that is yet. So that's about 10,000 words. That is not taking into account stuff I've written and then rejected, stuff I've written and then been like, actually, no, this doesn't link in anymore. So that, I'd say, would roughly break it down. Now, when you do a mid-year review, you have to submit about 8,000 words. So most people will write at least 8,000 words. Some people write more. I'm sure there are some people who've written way more than that, because the other big part of my project is data. And this is quite unusual for an English literature student, although getting more common, I would argue. But obviously because I have this big data element to my project, which, if you don't know, I'm cataloguing, in theory, all the queer romance novels published between 2010 and 2020. Obviously, I'm not going to get all of them, it'd be impossible. But that means, obviously, that some months I focus on data way more than I focus on writing. So people who don't have that will probably have written way more than me. But I've done about 4,000 data entries, and I would say my data has really exploded. So when I first started, I was literally just like, yeah, I want to kind of catalogue these, I'm going to start making a list. And now it is, I'm cataloguing these, I've targeted certain publishers, I'm looking at the ethnicity, the gender, the sexuality of the characters within these books, I'm looking at what subgenres they fall into, I'm looking at where are they published, who's publishing them, what is the author like, what do we know about the author, how does that affect the book? So for each individual entry, there is about 8 bits of information that I have to gather. So obviously it takes quite a bit of time, but I'm starting to see the results from that, and that's really exciting. And I'm not going to tell you what they are because I'm going to keep it to myself a little bit, but it's very exciting. And that's kind of been my focus for the last 3 months. 10,000 words, 4,000 data entries is roughly been my output. Then, of course, there are softer outputs. There are things that I have still done that maybe don't link directly into my thesis or my project. I have had to fill in a lot of ethical forms. This has taken time. And that's because in my second year, starting really soon actually, I want to be interviewing publishers. I want to be interviewing authors. I want to do reader surveys, writer surveys. So I've had to get ethical approval for that. And it's taken about, I started on this ethical approval January of 2020 and I still haven't got it yet. I'm in the final stages, but that gives you an idea of that's something that takes a long time. It's a lot of forms, it's a lot of supporting documents, it's a lot of thinking, because I have to have already established, okay, I want to write I want to do a reader survey. And the ethical board is like, okay, well, what questions are you asking? So there's been a lot of thought process that's gone into that. I've then also helped found a academic online community, an academic online network. That's the word, an academic online network, which is called the Midlands Network of Popular Culture. And already we launched in August and we've already done 3 or 4 events. So that's been a big commitment. That's been a lot of time. That's been a lot of work that is super important in terms of networking, in terms of learning and understanding about like the academic world, but obviously it doesn't directly relate back into my thesis. And then I would say the final thing is there is so much admin that goes along with a PhD. You have to do thesis outlines. You have to be keeping track of what have you done? What are you going to do? How is this working? Have you submitted this form? Blah, 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 blah. There's so much admin that takes up a surprising amount of time. And I've done all the admin. I've done my thesis outlines. I've worked out what I need to do. And that's something you probably are going to do more in your first year, I would say, than any other year, because you're setting it all up. You're putting yourself in a good space for your next years. So that, as succinctly as possible, is what I've done. Now I'm going to move on to how have I felt about it. I would say a lot of emotions. Doing a PhD is hard. It is a mental marathon, is what I'm going to call it, a mental marathon. Add in a global pandemic, which kicked off in March, which caused the university to close, which changed the world as we know it. So many of my friends who were doing PhDs and masters at UOB went back to their parents. A lot of people left Birmingham because with the university closed, there wasn't anything to keep us there. It was lonely, quite frankly, because a lot of us didn't necessarily live with friends because a lot of us were in our first year. That obviously had a massive impact. It had an impact on my productivity. It had an impact on my kind of sense of community because suddenly a PhD felt even more isolating. And before that, that wasn't something I'd ever felt. I know a lot of people say a PhD is so isolating, it's so lonely, but that hadn't been my experience because I'd found such a wonderful community at Birmingham. I was meeting so many new people. I was meeting people in second year, third year. I had a great group of friends right from the start because I met them in Freshers Week and we pretty much hung out once or twice a week, every single week. So I found the PhD experience a great community, really social, and suddenly it was like, oh my God, I'm all by myself. And I struggled. I found it hard. I wasn't being that productive. I have tried to be open about that on this channel, but honestly, there was a lot of anxiety, there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of depression, there was a lot of feelings of what the hell am I doing with my life? Is this really what I should be focusing on right now? And from talking to my friends who are also in this position, that was completely normal. So many of us felt like that. And yeah, maybe it was the global pandemic, but maybe that's also just things you go through during a PhD. And I saw something on Instagram recently that said most PhD students will consider dropping out at some point. And I think that's something to be aware of when you go into this. Now, the flip side of that is I have also found my PhD so rewarding. I found it so exciting. I've got really interested in my research. I've loved finding out about other people's research. I've loved going to the library and being able to just read all about queer theory and my topic and romance novels. I've enjoyed telling people about my research. I have loved the whole process and the atmosphere and community of academia. So I wouldn't change doing a PhD for anything. Because yes, there's been those lows, but there's also been those highs. There's been those times where I've written something really good and I'm like, I'm so proud of this. I've also been lucky enough to have a wonderful supervisory team, and I feel so blessed to have them because they've been so supportive, so understanding. They are enthusiastic about my research. They are always there to help me. And I'd love to say that's everyone's experience, but the truth is it isn't. So I feel really lucky to have them in my corner, to be kind of championing me, championing my research, and just getting me just as excited about it all over again every month when I come in and be like, oh, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. And suddenly they're like, no, you're doing great. Like, come on, you can do this. That's just like a snapshot of the emotions I have felt while doing a PhD. And as you can tell, it's a roller coaster ride. Some months you feel on top of the world. Then the next day you will be like, oh my God, what am I doing? The quicker you can build a community around you, whether it's online, through things like the network that I've set up, through Twitter, through Facebook, through any of the groups that the university is currently putting together. Find yourself a community of people who are doing a PhD, and then also make sure you're still talking to your friends who don't do PhDs. Remember, you have a life outside of the PhD, and check in with them, go see them, hang out with them, return back to sort of normal stuff for a few days and get that separation, because that's just as important. So that's been my first year of the PhD. It's not necessarily been a normal year because of the global situation, but it's been my first year, and although it hasn't all been perfect, I'm so glad I'm still doing the PhD. I'm still so excited to be doing the PhD. And in a lot of ways, it was so much different from my expectations. Go check out my 3-month expectations versus reality one to really get an idea of the differences in detail. It's kind of scary to think I'm now in my 2nd year technically, and I only have like 2.5 years left of this whole process. That seems crazy to me. If you have any questions, always feel free to leave a comment or reach out to me on Instagram at PhD Life with Lucy. And as always, if you like this kind of content, subscribe, like the video, all that jazz. You know what you're doing by now. And I will see you next Sunday. Bye.